So you should never have to worry about your self-esteem as a Christian, but there's some Christians that do. And there's things that can cause that. You get in a relationship with somebody that's always beating you down and calling you stupid. Well, that was a dumb thing to do. Why'd you do that? That's stupid. You know, you do the dumbest things. Sometimes you are so stupid. And just a barrage of that constantly can send you to the place where you start thinking, well, I guess I am stupid, and I guess I can't do anything, and I guess I can't make any decisions. And people that are highly manipulative and abusive and controlling will try to get others to bend to those type of techniques. And if somebody's putting that on you, they don't have any right to put that on you. They don't have any right to put that on you. And I've seen it happen to my children. I've seen it happen to other people. And that can cause a person to go down. Nathan Bemis was here. And Nathan Bemis became a diabetic and didn't know that he was a diabetic. But he was having problems, and it was affecting his relationship with Louise. Now, Louise was a graduate of Bob Jones University and a school teacher. She was an intelligent woman. You've heard Nathan's testimony. You know, he was 16 years old in the 5th grade. He was driving to school, and the kids thought he was the teacher. and he got diabetes, and he started getting into this depressed state. See, not knowing that it was a physical thing that was causing it. It was his diabetes that was causing it, his high blood sugar that was getting his whole system out of whack. Well, he knew something was wrong because he would tell Louise, he'd say, why are you doing that stupid stuff? You are so stupid. I can't believe I married somebody as stupid as you. You know? And he knew that wasn't right. And when he started that, first of all, he thought it was a spiritual thing. He thought some demons had gotten a hold of him. And so he's out there pleading the blood and asking God to cast out demons and, you know, going through all that because he thought it was a spiritual thing. Guess what? It wasn't a spiritual thing. And that's one thing. There is a spiritual thing that happens, but not every case is spiritual. And if a Christian could just see that, if a preachers could just see that yes, sometimes it is spiritual, but not all the time. And sometimes there's some legitimate physical things that are going on. And with Nathan Bemis, as soon as he got on the right kind of diet and got that blood sugar under control, he went back to being his normal self, where he wouldn't, you know, he would cry when he thought about how insensitive he had been towards Louise, because Louise had typed his notes and helped him through school and, you know, he would never have made it as far as he went in life if it hadn't have been for Louise and for him to have that reaction toward her. So, you know, that W of worthwhile, we should all have some self-worth. The E would be elect to love. Feeling unloved, that no one cares about me, feeling unworthy of love. And people can get in that can trigger depression. But there's one thing that we all know, no matter what happens in our life, no matter what we go through, God loves us. And we know that. And He doesn't set conditions on that love. He doesn't say, I'm going to love you as long as, boom, 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 boom. He just says, I love you. I love you. And the reason why, and this is going to sound shallow, but it's very deep. It's going to sound shallow, but it's very deep. The reason why God has allowed sin is so that He could demonstrate His love.
Amen.
And where sin doth abound, grace did much more abound. And God shows His love when man is in his sinful mess. Did God know that when He created Adam, that Adam would fall? Yeah, He knew it. And He created him. Did God know that He would plunge the whole human race into sin and every man would be born with a sin nature? Yep, He knew it. And He allowed it to happen. But what did He do? God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. So God allowed sin to take place so that he could show his love toward us. And any sinner that ever gets saved, that's what he sees. He sees, there's no reason why God should love me, and yet he loves me. And so it sounds real shallow, but it's actually pretty deep when you think about it. Responsibility. On the R down here, responsibility is another way of saying own your own actions. Feeling helpless and lack of self-confidence can be a trigger to cause a person to go into depression. And sometimes you have to remind yourself of some of the things that you have done that have been beneficial and helpful to others. And then the S she has listed here is success takes action. And lack of motivation to use skills, fear of failure, or I'm a failure and can't do it. When people start using those excuses, then they can get a depressed outlook on life and go into some deep depression. The way you deal with that is identify what you want to accomplish, list the steps involved, and start the first step. So and in the book that I got this out of, there are charts for the physical, the spiritual, the attitude, behavioral. And so all these things play together in causing a person to be able to recognize depression. Okay, what do you do? Now, are there any questions on this thus far? I keep on rambling through here. I just charge on through it without giving anybody a chance to ask a question. And but if you have a question or you want to say something, go ahead, because this is very informal. And I don't expect you to be able to, hopefully by going through some of this stuff, number one, you'll realize that depression is a real thing, and there might be somebody close to you that suffers from it, and there's a way that you can be a help and a blessing to them, and for them that it is possible for them to recover and to be normal, and to live what we would call a normal life without the deep depression. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't ever relapse and go back into it, but it means that they don't have to stay there, and that they can come out, and they can be helped. Sometimes they're in so deep initially that they have to go to a doctor, and they have to get some medicine. But once they get the medicine and get out of that deep depression, there's some ways that depression can be treated. The one thing that you have to do is realize that everybody's different. We're all different. We all have different thresholds of what we can stand and what we can take. I have a very low threshold when it comes to pain. Believe me, I am the biggest baby when it comes to pain. I scream, I holler. I say, oh no, don't do that. And I have a low threshold when it comes to, I don't know if these Muslims ever take over, I hope they just chop my head off real fast, because man, if they just stab around on me, man, I'm going to go crazy. I don't want to feel all that pain. and other, that can be depressing. But a quick beheading is okay. I've watched that, and then they do it pretty fast. Within about 10 seconds, the person's dead. So that's not too bad a way, really. And but it looks gory and gruesome and horrible, but absent from the body, present with the Lord, it's over then. But man, they just torture me for weeks. Oh, and I've read about all this stuff too, and that's what scares me worse. Yeah, can be. It can be. Yeah, yeah. And it might not be the fact that it's maintenance and that it's grass that makes it so depressing. It might mean that your physical condition doesn't enable you to get out and do it. That makes it depressing. We all do. Yeah, we all get depressed at times, but we don't all get the same degree of depression. And there's some people that can't control it as well, and it actually becomes a thing where, yeah, we all get a little depressed.
I think a lot of times it's because you don't realize you're in that depression. The person that's in it doesn't realize they're there.
many times.
And it's not until they come out of there.
Yeah.
Find out that they were there.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard for a person to admit that they're there, that they're depressed. Yeah. Yeah. Going through the phase of molding where they couldn't fly, they couldn't eat, they would just go off someplace solitary. All their feathers would start falling out. Their wings would just droop. They would just mope around, and they would die. They would actually come to the place where they got to the place where they would just starve to death and die. And the only way that you could get them out of that condition, or that they could come out of it, is for other eagles to come over that eagle and circle around and call. They would call. And as they called, they would drop meat down there. And they would circle and call and drop the meat. And once the eagle picked up the meat and started to eat it, he started getting his strength back. And once he started getting his strength back and his feathers started growing back, then he came out of it and he would eventually fly off. This is a process that happens. And I don't know that it happens to every eagle, but it's a thing that happens to them. At least that's what the Eagle Man said. That's what the Eagle Man said. I don't know whether it was just a good illustration, And he was talking about how we get down sometimes, and the Lord just has to drop some stuff down on us, and pick us back up. So I hope it's true. He said it is the truth, and I believed him. I believe that's the truth. And you're right. We all get depressed at some time, but there are some people that can't shake it. I mean, usually I can shake off my depression. I can get up and go out and do something. Can I? My wife is giving me that skeptical look. But that doesn't last too long. Yes, Steve? Yeah.
You were saying there about people getting depressed about wanting to end this life and things like this. The Lord comes takes me out of here. And she got all upset about this and was so worried and called me up the next day and called Sharon up and was worried about her. She thought I was depressed or something like that, other than just wanting to get out of this world, How is just anxious to get out of here?
Well, that's normal. That's a normal, natural reaction, especially when there's problems. Especially when problems come, or health problems come, or family problems come, and you get to realizing, there's nothing left for you down here. What is there down here? You've accomplished things in life that you wanted to accomplish, and for some people, and but a person that's truly depressed, that wants to kill themselves and is suicidal, I say all the time, man, I'm ready to go, and if I'm on the next load, that's fine with me because I'm ready. That doesn't mean that I'm going to go out and kill myself. That doesn't mean that I'm suicidal. And some people get so depressed that the only way that they can see of anything being better for them or for anyone else is for them to end their life. And for a person that is depressed and suicidal, killing themselves seems like a rational thing to do, because it's going to end their problems and it's going to be better off for the people around them, and they can't see the damage and the hurt that it's going to do for others. They actually, in their mind, feel like that it would be the best thing for everyone concerned. And that's the difference between just a normal thing where we say, well, there's nothing left here for me, man. I wish I'd just go ahead and die and go and be with the Lord, because we know that's where all the good stuff is. But it doesn't mean that we have a plan to go out and kill ourselves. The degree as to how serious a person is when it comes to suicide, if a person says that they feel like taking their lives, that should always be taken seriously. It should never be sloughed off. Talking about suicide doesn't make a person any more suicidal. It doesn't mean that you will actually cause something to snap or trigger and cause them to go out and actually do it. Doesn't mean that. Sometimes talking about it is the best thing that they can do, because they start to see it in a different perspective than the way they're thinking about it. If they have a plan, if they say, I know what I'm, if somebody tells me they're suicidal, and the first thing I'm going to ask them is, well, what do you mean you're suicidal? You mean you're going to kill yourself? And if they say yes, I said, well, how would you do that? And to see if they have any kind of plan. If they have a plan, that is very, very dangerous. You know what I'm going to do? If somebody comes to me as a pastor and says, I'm suicidal, and I'm going to take an overdose of pills and kill myself, I'm going to put them in the car and take them to the hospital. That's my responsibility. I don't care what they say in between. That's where I'm going, and I'm going to let somebody from mental health come and deal with them.
As we go out and go right back into a city that he was just telling
Mm-hmm.
okay. And we think,
Well, yeah, not suicidal in the sense that we're talking about. Not depressed and suicidal. Yeah, he might have done some crazy things. Harry?
I was going to say, it looks like you're saying that there's two kinds of depression. One is
Sure.
from a physiological source.
Sure.
That nobody can help. They're born that way.
Not necessarily born that way, but could be. Yeah.
In other words, there's some chemical imbalance in their brain
Right.
that you can identify.
That's right.
And
That's right.
Then you're saying that there is a type of depression that is brought on by environmental pressure.
Environmental pressure, or sometimes other things, sometimes spiritual.
Spiritual, something that is not identifiable physiologically.
Right.
Okay. Now, every drug addict or alcohol.
Yeah, things are unlawful for him to utter.
Talk about that away at church night. His soul has already been down there.
Yeah. Well,
Something that happened to him that he died before he back up.
you know, there is a topic that comes up amongst believers from time to time, and I think it came from maybe some of the old-timey, like regular Baptist and people like that. And I'm not sure about this, but I think that they were prone to believe in what we call soul sleep. In other words, they were in a sleeping mode, not in a conscious mode when they went to the hereafter, and because it says they slept with their fathers and things like that. But from all the indications I get out of studying the Bible, they were conscious. I mean, you know, even though Lazarus didn't do any speaking, Abraham spoke, and Lazarus was comforted. And so it looks like that there's some things about that I don't understand, to be honest with you.
So in the pit, there's no one can be in the pit that is standing. Bottomless pit.
Right.
All unrighteousness is in the bottomless pit.
Well, in hell, now the bottomless pit is different from hell. Okay. Yeah, and I think that's where the spirits that Jesus went down and preached to that were in prison, it talks about them in Jude being chained, and so I think there was a separate holding place for them. The bottomless pit seems to be a separate place. There's things there right now that in the Revelation, they come up out of the pit.
They can move around in there, though, somewhat, can't they?
Yeah, I guess. They're just probably, yeah, probably like well, it says like they're like wandering stars, you know, just, isn't that what it says in Jude, those false prophets? In the book of Jude, it says, yeah, verse 13, it says, raging waves of the sea, and this is talking about the false prophets who are spots in your feast of charity. It says, raging waves of the sea, foaming out their own shame, wandering stars, to whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever. So it's like, you know, wandering stars. They're just wandering, no direction, you know, in the to whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever. So, okay. Anybody have anything else, Max?
Just from this morning's Sunday school class.
Uh-huh.
The Old Testament sacrifice that you brought up, the blood sacrifice,
Mm-hmm.
was an act of faith.
Who said it's an act of faith?
Well, if it's not faith,
was an act of obedience. They didn't have to have any faith. God told them to do it. And if they did it, they were obedient. Now, what they thought when they brought that sacrifice, I believe they believed that that sacrifice was needed for them to have their forgiveness. But as soon as they went away, they had no clearance of conscience. Their conscience wasn't clear. So they had to continue to bring the sacrifices, continue to bring the sacrifices. They didn't have eternal security like we did. They weren't resting in a sure thing. I know exactly what you're trying to. Well, they knew something was real when the Passover lamb was a real sacrifice. The Passover was their number one feast of every year. And God passed over them because they were obedient in taking that lamb and killing that lamb and offering that blood. Now, did that mean that every one of them looked forward to the cross? I don't know. I don't think so. But certainly they could have seen that there was going to come a day when that seed would come who would bruise the head of the serpent. Yeah. But you don't know that until you read Hebrews 11. So, yeah, and so did Job. You know, Job had no Bible, but he had great revelation of God. These people were not ignorant of God. I mean, God appeared to them. You know, now we have the whole revelation, the written revelation, so God doesn't appear anymore to us because he appears to us in the book, in the Word of God. Okay, is there anything else? Now, for those of you that are just come in for tonight, I've been doing a study on depression, and even though that's not a Bible subject as far as being listed in the Bible as such, there's no depression, the word depression is not in the Bible, but certainly people came to the place where they were down, discouraged, depressed, and it's something that happens today more than it used to happen. And we've been through about 4 weeks of this now. And I think through some of the questions that have been asked, there is sort of a misunderstanding, a little bit of a misunderstanding, or at least maybe I portrayed it to cause you to misunderstand, and that is that if a person is depressed, that means that they have to go on medication. I don't believe that. However, there are levels of depression, and when a person hits a certain level of depression, sometimes that's the only thing that can salvage them immediately and get them back on their feet. There is a natural cycle of depression that a person can naturally go through. The reason that depression is so dangerous is because many times people commit suicide when they're in a depressed state. And so it's a very dangerous thing for a person to stay in that state for a very long time. But when it comes to depression, there's more ways to treat depression than just medication. And so I want to go over some of the things as far as treatment of depression is concerned.